Hello and welcome back to Heat Digest. On this episode, we have major injury updates referring to Terry Rozier, Josh Richardson, and Duncan Robinson. We'll break down all of these reports on this episode of Heat Digest, but first remember to subscribe to the channel, as 92% of you guys are not currently subscribed to the channel, and we are less than 70 away from 1,000. We'd appreciate it if we could hit this milestone. We appreciate your support. Now let's get to it and break down the major injury updates as the Miami Heat went into a game yesterday against the Boston Celtics at home, shorthanded without Jimmy Butler due to a death in the family. Once again, thoughts and prayers to Jimmy and his entire family. Hope everything goes well over there. Hope everyone gets through that healthy and effective. But again, we went in shorthanded, and we left even worse, even more shorthanded, as we lost Josh Richardson, we lost Terry Rozier, and now Duncan Robinson is now listed to day. Despite him being able to finish the game yesterday, he still is dealing with some form of injury to the left shoulder/elbow after a skirmish he got into with Jaylen Brown yesterday during the game Miami against Boston. We'll get into that in just a second, but first let's break down the tweet from Shams referring to Josh Richardson, saying, and I quote, "Miami Heat guard Josh Richardson has suffered a dislocated right shoulder and is expected to be reevaluated in a few weeks," sources tell The Athletic. Richardson has averaged 10 points in return season in Miami, including 40% from the three-point range in over his last 2 months. Now, if you haven't been watching much of Miami Heat basketball, I can tell you that Josh Richardson has easily been one of the best players coming off the bench for the Miami Heat, especially as of late. He's been very effective, not only on the offensive end, like Shams has mentioned in that tweet, shooting a very high percentage from behind the three-point line, but he's also shooting more three-point shots, and again, obviously at a higher clip, 40% or higher over this last stretch, but also the ability, his willingness, and his capability to play defense effectively, and it's on these high-tier offensive players on opposing teams. It's been great for the Miami Heat, especially to watch as a viewer, knowing that we do have someone on the bench who is young, lengthy, and athletic enough to be a good defender, if not a good two-way player for the Miami Heat, as he can score on the offensive end. He's obviously not a Jimmy Butler-esque type of player on the offense, but again, he can hit an open three at a high percentage while also being able to handle the ball to some degree. Now, the biggest question mark going into today, as we had 2 MRIs scheduled, one for Josh Richardson and the other for Terry Rozier, who also was injured in yesterday's game against the Boston Celtics. Now, Shams had this to tweet later today, just about an hour and a half ago, saying, and I quote, "Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier has avoided any major injury, as MRI today showed a sprained right knee, and he will be evaluated week to week," sources tell The Athletic. Rozier suffered the injury Sunday against the Boston Celtics, just like Josh Richardson did. Now, Rozier's was different than Josh Richardson's in the sense that Richardson was diving on the floor for a loose ball when it seemed like his shoulder popped out of place, and then now he's dealing with a dislocated right shoulder. For Rozier, he was making an offensive play when he was on his way down. His leg was kind of bent over another player's leg. It wasn't very gruesome. It wasn't a hostile act, I will say, from anyone on the Boston side of things or for the Miami Heat side of things, obviously, but it was a basketball play. It is just a bad result for the Miami Heat and Terry Rozier. Fortunately for the Miami Heat and Terry Rozier, it is only a knee sprain, coming from the report of Shams, who's a very credible name in the basketball insider business. But again, they got away with one. He isn't going to miss the rest of the season with any form of torn ligaments or Achilles or the MCL or the ACL, any of those important things that really end players' seasons and almost careers. So we did get away with one there, and we are extremely fortunate that our newly acquired player in Terry Rozier is not going to be absent for the remainder of the season, but just a period of time in order to get through a sprained right knee. Now, Josh Richardson as well also will be out for a handful of time. He will be reevaluated in a few weeks. So we'll assume in 2 weeks we'll get, or at least a week, we'll get another update on Josh Richardson and his ability to play. But it is very rough, as the Miami Heat went into this game against the Boston Celtics without their number one player in Jimmy Butler. And then halfway through, we lose Josh Richardson, and then another quarter in, we lose Terry Rozier, and then we have a skirmish with Duncan Robinson, which we'll get to now, where Duncan Robinson and Jaylen Brown did not see eye to eye, if you will, and it resulted in a little bit of banter, a little bit of chirpiness between the two teams and Duncan Robinson and Jaylen Brown. Now, in the process, Jaylen Brown was addressed a flagrant foul because of the two players getting tied up, falling to the ground, and the bending of Duncan Robinson's arm kind of looked like it could have been a form of malicious act. Again, it was only a flagrant one, so obviously Jaylen Brown is not being labeled as a malicious player today, and he did not get kicked out of the game just yesterday. But it was not good for the Miami Heat, as Duncan Robinson, another player for the Miami Heat, another good player for the Miami Heat, did have to exit the game. He ended up coming back, obviously, as he did not miss much. But again, he was looked at because of the pain he felt in the shoulder and elbow area on his left arm. So he's now listed for day-to-day, questionable to play tomorrow in the game against Milwaukee, which is the first of 6 on the road for the Miami Heat. It's going to be interesting. This is going to be a big reality check for the Miami Heat, as now starting point guard, newly acquired Terry Rozier, is out. Jimmy Butler will be out at least tomorrow's game against Milwaukee. He might even miss more time than that, depending on how he is feeling mentally. Also, Josh Richardson, the backup shooting guard behind Tyler Hero, is also now out. It's going to be a very interesting point for the Miami Heat in this season. I would not be surprised to see, I believe Caleb Martin is not leaving from the starting lineup, as he's been playing extremely effectively, especially over the last handful of games. He's been playing great defense. His three-point shot has been extremely effective, and he's also not been scared to put the ball on the floor and drive into the basket and take some wild shots for layups as of late, especially over the last few games. But again, with no Jimmy, with no Rozier, with no Richardson, and possibly no Duncan Robinson, it is scary for the Miami Heat, as the next few games are not going to be very easy, as they're all on the road and they're coming against great teams: Milwaukee, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Sacramento, Portland, and Denver. Thankfully, we do have the All-Star break after the game in Philadelphia, which will help, as players will have a longer time to rest, thankfully. But again, I'm not going to be surprised if Duncan does miss tomorrow's game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Look for Jaquez to play a lot more minutes. He can play the 3, the 4, even the 1 or the 2, depending on where they put Tyler Hero in all of this craziness. Haywood Highsmith's minutes are definitely going up. I wouldn't be surprised if Alondes Williams, the new call-up from the G League, does get his first crack at some real minutes for the Miami Heat, as we are extremely short-handed. Overall, not too bad of news. Josh Richardson really, it seems like, got the worst end of this. I know Rozier had the scariest injury, especially in hindsight when it first happened, due to the fact it being to a knee, and that is always scary, especially for any athlete, as the MCL, the ACL are all vital to everyone really in the day-to-day, but obviously athletes, as it can be a long, slow, and just really debilitating rehab when you have to deal with things of that, or injuries of that nature. So again, the Miami Heat they took a beating against the Boston Celtics. Not really on the court, as we only lost by 4 in a very back and forth and competitive game, but we did go in without Jimmy Butler, and now we're leaving the game without Rozier, without Richardson, and Duncan Robinson listed as day-to-day. So it's going to be a real gut-wrench check for the Miami Heat, as they are extremely short-handed, and they have a huge stretch of games coming up, all on the road. Thankfully, the All-Star break might help us out a bit here, but it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see what goes on. Eric Spoelstra is one to be trusted, though, in this type of scenario. The lineup construction won't be anything new to him, as we are leading the league in different lineups this season. But that's going to be it for this episode of Heat Digest. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.